From Minneapolis, where the weather has taken a turn for the frightful. Looks a little bit like a snow globe outside, but we're here in the shelter of my home. Gonna play some Madden. I'm coming at you solo this week. It's the holiday season, and we're getting busy, so Preston's not available this week. But we're going to try a new format this week. Last time we played, which was a while ago, before the Thanksgiving holiday, we got crushed by the Packers, 44-0, bringing our Vikings to a paltry 4-7 record. Playoff chances in our universe here are probably pretty slim. I'd wager that if the Vikings hung a 44-0 defeat against the Packers in real life, that Mike Zimmer might just be fired, given his walking papers. So anyway, things are looking pretty dark in our universe for this Viking season. But thin silver lining here is it's an opportunity to experiment and learn and try some new things. I've been thinking about this season as kind of a proof of concept for this show, giving Viking fans a new way to experience the Viking season. And so because it's a proof of concept, I think more proofing, more experimenting is good. And so for this week, I'm using a feature in Madden called Play the Moments. You're not going to see a full game here. What you're going to see is Madden is going to do kind of a stylish simulation of most of the plays, and then it's going to ask me to jump in and play in the pivotal plays, the important ones. So third downs, red zone, end of game, end of half, things like that. And so our Madden play has not been super impressive. Hopefully in this mode, we'll get a good feel for how the game thinks the Vikings will hang against the Patriots. And I'll only have to intervene occasionally, and we'll see if in those important moments if I'm able to come up big or if I shrink in the moment. So it'll be an interesting new way to try this out. It'll also shrink the show. We've been averaging about an hour and 20 minutes. This will probably be about a 30-minute show. We'll be kicking off to Cordero Patterson. That was one of the matchups that I called out. In fact, it was the only matchup that I called out in this game. I put it in my outline document as Cordero Patterson versus the world. He's been doing some interesting things for the Patriots this year. For people who have been following along with the Patriots, they used him at running back one week. They had oh, this is interesting. I wasn't expecting a moment so soon. I'm going to skip this one. It's a first quarter drive. I want to see how the game responds. Not well. 3rd and 13 here, and 3 and out. They're going to go 3 and out. I'd wager that I don't know that I would have done worse than that. But anyhow, there was a week where the Pats running backs were really banged up, and they ended up playing the balance of the game with Cordero Patterson at running back. And I think he scored a touchdown or two. Really did some interesting things. There have been some headlines about how the Vikings believe, well, Mike Zimmer said he thinks the Pats have really done more with Patterson than the Vikings were able to. So I think this will be an interesting game to watch to see if Cordero Patterson has any big plays and if he shapes the game at all. Meanwhile, I'm jumping in for the first time here, 3rd and 9. The Pats are in field goal range here, and we're going to see if we can hold them to a field goal. So I've called a zone blitz here on the left side. I'm going to try to get some pressure on Tom Brady and see if we can prevent a first down. And I do not. Gronkowski, they give him the touchdown on that. And so there's our first example of playing the moment, and not a good one. Not a good moment for me. Looking at these teams in Madden, the Patriots are, I think, one of the top, at least at the beginning of the season, they were a top 3 team on Madden, rated 85 overall. The 2 positions where they're really dominant are quarterback and tight end. Rob Gronkowski's a 99 overall. Tom Brady, I think, is right now in 97 or pretty close to 99. Outside of those two positions, the Madden ratings are pretty evenly ranked, pretty evenly matched. That is, the Pats have a much better offensive line than us. Meanwhile, the Vikings have a better defensive line. Our wide receiving core is a little bit better. But outside of that, looking at the running backs, the linebackers, the defensive backs, special teams, more or less evenly matched. They haven't been asking me to jump in on these offensive third downs, interestingly enough. And so that's going to be the Vikings' second punt of the game here in the first quarter. And the Pats are driving again, so that doesn't look too good. They're rapidly approaching the red zone. The one thing I would say is that this is a little bit of vindication as we watch these plays. As we watch these plays come up, it makes me feel like we're not alone responsible for what's happening. I've got a friend and former classmate, my friend Adam's calling in. I'm going to let him pipe in here. Can you hear me, Adam?
Of course. Adam Georgie, how are you?
Good. I'm pumping up your volume here and putting you by the mic, just hopefully so people can hear you.
Of course.
Do you have the stream on your end?
I do not. I am currently walking outside in tropical Ann Arbor, Michigan, fittingly enough, and as a fan of the podcast, happy to call in.
All right. Well, we're nearing the end of the first quarter. The Pats are up 7-0, and they've got the ball on the 23, basically near the red zone, trying to score again. And so they're off to a fast start. We're off to a slow start, but you and I lived together in Boston for the last 2 years. And
that's the rumor?
One of the things that I quickly learned about you is that you are a big Tom Brady fan. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, well, again, this is fitting because I'm currently where Touchdown Tommy spent his mediocre college years. But my fandom of Tom Brady did not start on a good note. When I was 6 years old, in his first 2 starts, I remember going to Michigan Stadium with my dad, and he lost to Notre Dame one week and to a Donovan McNabb-led Syracuse team the next. And this is the year after we won the national title, and he was not the starting quarterback. So I turned to my dad the following week when I was 6 and told him point blank that I wanted to play football for the University of Michigan. And he responded, correctly, I might add, saying that people in my family are not very athletic and that I should probably find a different hobby. And I said, I think you're wrong, and, oh, by the way, I'm definitely faster and stronger than Tom Brady.
And for those who are watching and might not know you, who is more right in that scenario, you or your dad?
Well, I like to think Tom Brady and I have had varying amounts of success, and I'll leave it at that.
All right.
But sure, to answer your question, he was right, and I decided to play trombone rather than football.
You were part of the Michigan marching band, yes?
Yeah.
Now, tell me, you said when you say mediocre college career, is that sarcasm? Is that a note primarily just to the shaky start? Or for those who don't know the full story, was Tom Brady's college career, what was that like? Was it something to write home about or not especially?
Here's the thing about anybody's college career at Michigan and just about Michigan fans in general. We're not happy unless we're unhappy. And so he had a solid college career by all accounts. He was pushed by a true freshman his junior year by the name of Drew Henson, who was the best prep quarterback coming out of high school. And so there were fans out there who were very upset that we weren't beating, your Gophers by a couple touchdowns, who said, okay, you need to put in Henson. And the coach at the time, Lloyd Carr, he would regularly platoon the quarterbacks. He'd put Brady in for the first quarter, he'd put Henson in for the second quarter, and then let whoever had the better quarter start the second half. That said, the next year, Brady really started to turn it on, and you started to see something special come out of him. It really culminated in an Orange Bowl win in Miami, Florida, against Alabama. This is before they were Nick Saban Alabama, but they were still, I believe, the SEC champs that year, if not the runner-up. And Tom Brady led Michigan to 4 touchdowns, 300-plus yards. and a come-from-behind win that was seen by many. If you've ever seen like documentaries like the Brady Six or anything like that kind of document his road from sixth-round draft pick going forward, they kind of see that as kind of a pivotal point in his college career. But to answer your question, by all accounts, solid college quarterback.
Sure. Now, we're going back a ways here, but can you remember what was the reaction of the Michigan fan base when Tom Brady was drafted late by the Patriots? Was it a surprise that he was drafted? Was there indignation that he wasn't drafted sooner? Was there, just what were the feelings, if you can remember any, from that point in time? Was it the first Michigan quarterback to be drafted for a while? What's the context there?
So the answer to that last point is no. A couple years earlier, Michigan won the national title, and Brian Griese was drafted by the Denver Broncos and became their starter post John Elway for a couple of years. In terms of how Michigan fans received it, in all honesty, there were a lot of Michigan players who were drafted that year. As is kind of the case most years, between 5 and 10 more or less get drafted. Last year, Michigan had 13 players get drafted, so I don't think the collective fan base's attention was really on the draft by the 6th round. That said, when Drew Bledsoe went down a year later, everybody in Ann Arbor just kind of perked their ears up because, they knew that he had a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, and so on that point, I want to tell you a story about the last time that the Minnesota Vikings beat the New England Patriots. It was in September of 2000, so 18 years ago. And,
oh, wow.
And that was Dante Culpepper out-dueling Drew Bledsoe. That Viking team finished the year 11-5 and was one game away from the Super Bowl. That Patriots team finished 5-11, and then they actually started the next season 0-2. And I had forgot that it was a Drew Bledsoe injury. I had just assumed that they were so sick of losing that it was time to start a new thing. And so then in week 3, the 0-2 Patriots have Tom Brady in there. It's the start of the Tom Brady era. And that team, by the end of the year, flipped its record to 5-11 the year prior to 11-5 that season. And they ended up upsetting, I would say, the Kurt Warner-led St. Louis Rams in the Super Bowl. And so that was me reliving basically the beginning of the Patriots dynasty. Tell me what you remember about that time, if anything.
Yeah, I think we remember it too. In Michigan, there's kind of a joke on, if you're a college football fan, which most people are in this state because the Lions just haven't been great in a very long time, you tend to follow the pro teams where your favorite Michigan or Michigan State player went. So in your case, you have a lot of people, the Vikings have a lot of people in East Lansing cheering for them tomorrow because of Kirk Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
So, going back to that, I can remember that Super Bowl very well, the Adam Vinatieri field goal to clinch it at the end, to win it at the end rather. You saw the run-up to that game. I just remember Drew Bledsoe was finally healthy, and the talking heads were debating, who do you put in, your franchise quarterback, who is Bledsoe, or the new guy who's coming in strong. They opted with Brady. The rest is history, and Drew Bledsoe goes the next year to the Bills, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right. And I mean, I guess I had lost an appreciation for how fast and meteoric Tom Brady's rise was. I mean, just that first season to go from 0-2 to an 11-5 record and a Super Bowl win, I mean, that is just a remarkable... I guess I had lost an appreciation for the fact that it didn't take them a while. It didn't take the Pats and Tom Brady a while for that dynasty to take shape. It kind of really came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think you could, though. There are some parallels that you might see this year, especially. We saw it a couple Mondays ago with Patrick Mahomes and Jared Goff, just two young quarterbacks doing their thing, and their teams are dominant out of nowhere. Not the Rams so much, but the Chiefs. And so you could, see history repeat itself in that way. That said, neither of them was an underdog like Brady and the Pats were that year.
Yeah, to be sure. So to give you a sense of what's happening here, we got a minute to go before halftime, and the Pats are up 21-3. Tom Brady already has 3 touchdowns. Kirk Cousins is 2 for 12, and so you might have missed this before you hopped on. I'm trying out a new format here where the game simulates and inserts the player for pivotal moments, and so a lot of this isn't expressly my fault. A lot of it is just simulating, and then it's giving me control in key moments.
Good excuse, Adam.
Well, So anyway, the Vikings are the offense is stagnant, and Tom Brady is picking us apart. Those East Lansing folks tomorrow might be a little bit disappointed if Kirk Cousins turns in one that looks like this. But I want to ask you, from what little you've been following the Vikings and or the Pats, what's your take on the game tomorrow? What do you expect to see?
I have to say that my experience as a Detroit Lions fan is a little bit damaging, but could come up good in your end. The Detroit Lions, interestingly enough, beat the Pats pretty decisively this year.
Yep.
By keeping Tom Brady off the field. Long, sustained, bend but not break drives, utilizing the running game, and basically keeping Brady to 3 possessions per half.
Yes.
And at the same time, they got dominated the other weekend by the Vikings. So if the transitive property of sports applies, and I know it does not in any which way, but football's a weird game, and I would not be surprised to see the real outcome be much different than the simulation thus far.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the Pats are 8-3, and I noted that of their 3 their 3 losses are pretty odd. They lost to the Jags and they lost to the Titans, both teams that are kind of struggling this year, and their worst loss was that loss against the Lions. And so we certainly hope that transitive property holds tomorrow. The Vikings defense, which is known for being pretty good, started the season in a pretty rough spot, but they've really recovered nicely. They held Aaron Rodgers to under 200 yards passing last week, and so I think it's been more of the Viking defense that we expect. And so hopefully they can slow down Tom Brady to the extent that teams can expect to do that. But I think you bring up a really good point about ball control. I think keeping the ball moving, running the ball well, I think
football
those are.
It's a game of possession and it's a game of control.
Yep.
So.
And so I think that's a savvy call out. And in this Madden game, the Vikings in the simulation have really been struggling to run the ball, and I think that would be a bad omen if that happens tomorrow as well. So we'll just have to see how it shakes out. Well, I'm approaching halftime here. I've got about 15 seconds left. I've got the ball at my own 40, and I'm just going to take a shot here. But as we roll into halftime, any closing... Well, one more talker I want to throw out there is that I have grown to... Living in Boston for 2 years, I've grown to appreciate the Pats more. I know they're pretty maligned. I know it's pretty easy to hate them as an evil empire of sports. I know it's pretty easy to hate Bill Belichick based on some of the more suspect things that he's done. But tell me, what's your take on the Pats? I mean, you're a big Tom Brady fan, but outside of Tom Brady, what are your feelings on this franchise?
You gotta respect them. The Patriot way is very real. The man knows how to win, Belichick. Robert Kraft is the most supportive owner you could have. In terms of my own personal fandom, once Tom Brady leaves, I suppose I'll feel the same way that North Carolina fans felt when Jordan retired, the first or the second time, not from the Wizards. But, you'd see a lot of North Carolina people be fans of the Bulls, and then not so much anymore. But again, I lived in Boston with you. I saw the community come together around it. I remember after they won a Super Bowl there, seeing Fenway just kind of erupt and a bunch of BU students just run away from their dorms all towards nowhere in particular. It's kind of cool how the community comes together, and I'd love to see something similar happen in Detroit someday.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the dream. I mean, that's the dream for Viking fans here. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was a fun memory. We got to see a pretty amazing game. We were at a bar, and that was the Falcons-Patriots game where the Pats were pretty much dead in the water at halftime. What was and there were a lot of shirts that people would wear in New England that would have, what was the score in that game? Do you remember?
I want to say 28-3.
Yeah. And so, we got to be right in the belly of the beast when the Pats made that comeback, and brought home a Super Bowl. And so that's pretty cool. And that's I think what we Viking fans dream of, is that someday we'll get to experience that ourselves. But so I'm entering the second half here with a 21-3 deficit. Tom Brady threw for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half, and so we're going to need a pretty Herculean effort in the second half. I'm going to try to buckle down and focus on the game to the extent that's possible, but any closing thoughts, anything else you want to mention?
Well, I just would mention that people have been saying for 5 years now, this is the year that Tom Brady regresses, and he keeps proving the doubters wrong. Eventually that year will come, but I would not be surprised tomorrow if he puts up similarly meteoric stats, to use your adjective. But I would not be surprised on the other end if the Vikings pull it out. So anyway, good luck, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you calling in, Adam, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right, you too.
So that was a fun chat. I hope that came through on the mic okay. The Pats just drove and got another field goal there, so they've extended their lead back to 21. The viewers are probably seeing here that on this simulation, the offenses looked pretty inert. Some negative runs, a lot of consecutive incompletions. But as I say that, we're driving here. We've got some life. Stephon Diggs makes a long reception, and we are in the red zone. I may live to regret this, but I'm going to take over here and see if we can turn this into a touchdown. We're going to have something that's going to look very familiar to our viewers. We're going to have Thielen coming across the middle in a drag, and then I'm going to have Rudolph coming over the middle a little bit higher. We're going to go to Thielen and get a couple yards, 3 or 4, and try to get ourselves a little closer for a touchdown. With how much we're down right now, I think a touchdown is pretty essential. And so that's my angle here, but I am going to try to take care of the ball. We've got Thielen doing a fade here, Diggs running a slant. I'm actually going to audible Treadwell into a drag, I guess. That's one that works for us pretty consistently. We'll see what we got. Treadwell struggled to get loose. I thought about throwing that up to Diggs in the back of the end zone, but ultimately nerves and fear got the better of me there. I was a little nervous that the way that Kirk has been throwing these balls, I was a little nervous that one might not go our way. Preston and I talked about that a little bit in last week's show. Because we've done a number on Kirk's confidence, he hasn't really been placing the balls in the best of spots. I go up high to Rudolph there, right by the pylon, but he's not able to bring it in. I saw a stat on ESPN. It was before the Packer game that Kirk Cousins, I think, had the most turnovers in the league amongst. I don't know if that was amongst all players or amongst quarterbacks, but I did feel briefly vindicated in that moment about the comical number of turnovers that Preston and I have been committing with Kirk Cousins. it's been pretty brutal and pretty ugly. I think we've got over 20 interceptions. Not to say that Kirk has done that bad in real life, but I think between the interceptions and the sacks and the pressure that he's often felt, he has been near the top of the league or at the top of the league in turnovers. And so, interesting drive here. We start the drive with a Danielle Hunter sack, and the Pats are in a 2nd and 14. But right after that, they complete a long pass to Chris Hogan. We hold him to a field goal, but that's a thin silver lining because we're not able to narrow that lead at all with the field goal of our own. And then meanwhile, in our simulation, the same thing happens. The Pats start the drive with a sack, and then Kirk completes a couple of long passes. So we're getting a little bit more offense going in the simulation here, particularly with Cousins to Diggs. Diggs has got it working. I'll take over inside the 20 again, and let's see if I can have a better result this time. I'm going to be running a spot pattern to Thielen here, and I'm going to have Treadwell running up to the corner of the end zone. That's primarily where my attention's going to be. Let's see what the defense shows us here. Going to go to Thielen underneath. Lots of room to work. That's going to get us a first down, and we're within the 5-yard line. Time is not on our side. As much as I'd like to maybe mix in a shotgun run here or an HB draw, I'm going to stick with the pass game. I'm going to be looking for Thielen underneath here, and I'm going to audible Morgan to an out. A lot of defenders over the middle here. I'm going to throw that away. Looked like a zone coverage over the middle and just too crowded. And actually, so with that clock stopped, I am actually going to, one play here, I'm going to try some sort of run play out of the shotgun. Get lots of receivers out there and see if that opens up enough space for Dalvin to get something going. You'll see between my left tackle and my left guard, there's a lot of room there, depending on if we can handle that linebacker at the goal line. And so let's see what we can do. Gets us 3 yards. I'm actually going to hurry up here. And I'm going to run another run play on 3rd and goal here and see what we can... Just doesn't work, and we're back at the 4. And so I think we'll see what the Ask Madden suggests here. I think we got to go for it here. We can't keep nipping away with field goals. It's just not going to cut it. And so we're going to have Thielen in motion, running a drag route. Morgan going up to the back, and Rudolph coming across the middle as well. I'm going to have Diggs actually do a more traditional curl, and we're going to see if we can convert here. And not enough room there. The Pats gave us a similar defensive look. Just a lot of linebackers dropping into a zone over the middle. Preston and I have joked about this in prior weeks. With how much we run those drag routes across the middle, even in a Madden franchise universe, you would expect AI coaches to kind of watch the tape and to game plan against us. And leave it to the Pats, who knows if that's what's going on here, but leave it to the Pats to kind of do that. They've really taken away the drag and made it hard for even my bread and butter to work. The Vikings defense steps up, gets them to 3 and out, and we get the ball back in decent field position. And so let's try this again. I'm going to open things up with a screen pass out of the gate. Running is off the table right now, but let's see if we can give Dalvin some room to make a play. Lots of space here. And clock's still running, even though I get hit out of bounds. So I'm going to go into a hurry up here. I'm going to be looking for Kyle Rudolph downfield or Thielen coming over the middle. It's going to be Thielen. That's going to be 7 or 8 more yards, and we're just going to keep on marching. And it would sure be good, at least for my own sake, to get some points on the board. Rudolph gets nothing there on the wheel route. I think that was that was 2nd and 3. So we got a big 3rd and 2 here. I'm going to run a spot pattern. That's another one that I like. And given that they've taken away those drags, maybe if we just have Thielen sit down, he'll be able to find a soft spot, find a space. And indeed he does. That'll be a first down. And we'll keep on. We'll see if we can get one more play off before the 2-minute warning. It's looking not super likely, but let's try. And because of the motion on that play, we don't. So a touchdown here makes it a 2-possession game, a 14-point game. We've got a complement of timeouts. Onside kicks would certainly be part of the equation here. Certainly the game's not over, but the odds are not great. But we'll fight. We'll see if we can make the end of this game interesting at a minimum. Going to have Dalvin coming over the middle of the field. I'm going to have a similar idea here, looking to see if I can get him the ball in open space. Rudolph coming down the seam is an option too, but I'm going to hit Dalvin there. He gets hung up on the offensive lineman briefly, and because of that, we don't get as much out of it as I would otherwise like. 4 verticals now with 3 guys on the left side. Rudolph is going to be coming opposite direction. I'm going to see if I can get somebody downfield. And indeed, Treadwell is there. And we're in a familiar spot here. We're back at the 5. I'm going to pull a Sean McVay here and just run the same play again, but I'm going to be looking for Rudolph this time. I don't know what the flag is. Potentially a defensive offsides penalty.
Offside. Defense.
And so we'll accept that. Going back to one of my conversations with Adam, we mentioned that the Vikings have not beaten the Patriots in 18 years. The lifetime series is 8-4. The Pats have 8 wins. The Vikings 4 losses. The Vikings have lost 4 in a row, and so that's where that 18 years comes into play. Mainly because we don't play the Pats very often as an AFC team, but a few of those recent losses have been pretty rough. Looking for the tight end in the flat there, but the linebacker jumps it. I remember that I was at 2 Viking games, one at TCF Bank Stadium in 2014. The Pats won that one 30-7. And then in 2006 at the Metrodome, the Pats beat the Vikings 31-7. In 2010, with Brett Favre at the helm, the Pats beat us that year as well. It wasn't as bad of a loss, 28-18, but what I remember about that game is that Brett Favre left the game with an injury. He got hit pretty bad, and he was really not the same after that. He played 3 or 4 more games, but his interception to touchdown rate was just brutal, and that was essentially the beginning of the end of the Brett Favre era in Minnesota. And so our history with the Pats in recent times is pretty rough. The Vikings are in a crucial stretch here, and we'll be fighting for playoff position tomorrow. And so tomorrow would be a great time to shake that bug. I managed to get a touchdown there with Dalvin Cook, and it looks like we're probably we're not going to go for 2. We're going to kick that extra point, and it's time for an onside kick. And so I've maybe done this once or twice, but this is not something that I've done terribly often. And so I'm not sure how exactly you kick a good onside kick in this game. It doesn't go 10 yards, and the Pats fall on it. But we do have our 3 timeouts here, and so at a minimum we can try to stop them, burn our timeouts, and get the ball back and make it a 7-point game. But looks like the Pats get that first down and are able to kneel. So I don't know. I think, Preston makes fun of me that I've been known to say that every game is super important, both in real life and in Madden. I'm going to break that trend and say I think tomorrow's game isn't as important. I'm mentally preparing myself for a loss, and I think because it's against an AFC foe, I think the Vikings can lose and survive. I think the more crucial game will be the game against the Seahawks the following week. And then we've got a showdown against the Bears late in the season. And so I think, and a Dolphins team that we can hopefully beat. At any rate, I think a win tomorrow would be great in terms of our playoff position. But we'll as always, we'll just hope that the Vikings come out and fight hard, and we'll hope for a win, but we'll carry on with whatever the end result is. So I want to thank folks for joining me, and thanks for sticking with me as we tried out a new format here. The end result is the same, but let me know what you thought. This probably clocked in more around 40 minutes, so about half the length of our usual show. Getting the feel for this play the moments mode, but there's a good chance we'll go back to that in future weeks. In the meantime, stay safe out there in the snowy weather in Minnesota. Enjoy the Vikings game tomorrow, and we'll see you again for that Seahawks game and the rest of the season. Skol.